Hello, how are you doing? Hope you've had a good half term. The topic for today is emotions. Now, in business, it can be a bit of a dirty word, can't it? In that, you might even, the fact that I've mentioned I'm going to talk about emotions or feelings, you might catch yourself scrolling past. Well, I would say that that's my commodity in my business because people come and sit in that chair behind me to talk about unprocessed emotions. That's not why they buy my services. Often they'll buy the services because they want to enhance performance, grow in some way. And often it's the inner stuff that's getting in the way of the outer results. And that's what I help them with. And over half term, I had some really shitty news. In fact, 2 pieces of shitty news. And I'm going to use that as an example of how we can process emotions effectively so that we don't get stuck and we can move on. So if we think about from a pragmatic point of view, emotions are there from an evolutionary point of view. We're either driven towards something pleasurable or away from something painful, and that is the purpose of our emotions. I've been reading a brilliant book called The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read. To be honest, it's primarily about emotions and how we process them. And she uses a brilliant metaphor in it and says that, let's say a warning light goes on your vehicle, so this is what emotions are like. So you get a warning light for petrol. How would you resolve that issue? Would you take the bulb out so that the warning light went off, or would you give your car what it needs? And that's the same way in which we need to think about our emotions. Now, quite often we're quite comfortable dealing with things like, or expressing anger, joy, compassion, things where there's no kind of shame associated with the emotion. And that shame can come from a classic scenario where, let's say, a little boy falls over on his bike, grazes his knee, cries, and he's told, there, don't cry, big boys don't cry. And so not only have they learned that they don't get the feelings met, or that it's not appropriate to express a feeling, but that you've to stuff those feelings down because it's not the done thing. And that is so common in my coaching practice. I'm going to make a sweeping generalisation here, but particularly with my gentleman clients, when I say to them, how do you feel about that? They look at me, gone out, like, you really want me to talk about feelings? And I don't know if you can see behind me, I've got the emotions wheel in the office, and it's there to help people to identify what it is that they're feeling. So I mentioned 2 bits of crappy news. The first bit of crappy news, actually, I was able to use my past experience, I was able to be pragmatic about it, and able to kind of put it to one side. Because the problem with emotions, when we're triggered, we have 3 options. We can ruminate over something, so make ourselves feel even worse. We can stuff our emotions or suppress our emotions. That's a risky strategy as well, because then they can pop up when we least expect it in an uncontrolled way, or in a set of circumstances that we don't want, which again enhances the shame element. Or we can process emotions. So in other words, get the emotion out of our system so we can move on from the issue. So first issue, fine, dealt with, moved on. The second issue, I have no experience of. No experience whatsoever. And I'll be honest, I spent a couple of days last week crying. And I've got some amazing mates who I shared this piece of news with, and they were dropping me all sorts of texts and, offering to call, go for a walk, all that kind of thing. And one of the, we're all different in terms of how we like to process our emotions. So for me, I'm a very private person. I know the irony sharing this stuff on here. But when I'm upset, I like to have a good old cry in private. I nearly said in public. No, I don't. I don't want anyone watching me when I'm crying. I just want to get it out the way. And there were bearing in mind we're in half term, I caught myself nipping off to the bathroom turning the tap on, letting it out, taking a deep breath, moving on from it. And the benefit of being able to process our emotions is that we lighten our load, but we're also able to be more resilient for those people that need us around us. Because if I was still holding all that emotion, I've got such a busy week this week, 3 webinars, half a dozen coaching clients, and if I go into those sessions carrying that stuff, how am I going to be useful to them? So here is the solution in terms of, the first thing is, don't ignore your emotions. You're only going to get stuck, and they can then pop out and bite you on the bum at a time when you don't want that. Particularly even in my coaching practice, often the emotions I'm dealing with clients, and they'll say things to me like, I've never told anyone this before. And all it is, it's an unprocessed emotion that's got stuck and is being re-triggered in adulthood. So first of all, don't ignore your emotions. Allow yourself time to process. So, as I say, we're all different. I like to process on my own, either having a good cry, or I use my journal, get my feelings out. It might be that you're different and you want to process your emotions with a family member, with a friend. But the point is, you get your feelings out, so you lighten your load and you can move on. So I hope that's been useful. Hope you're looking after yourself, and see you soon. Bye.